The Democratic Republic of Congo has signed a deal with sanctioned Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler to recover Congolese mining and oil assets owned by his company, the Ventura Group. The Congolese government stated that it will be taking back oil and mining assets valued at more than $2 billion. The United Nations and other groups have earlier accused Gertler of participating in corrupt dealings to benefit himself and Congo's then ruling Kabila family by looting the country's mineral wealth. He was sanctioned by the US under the Joe Biden administration in 2021. Kambale Musavuli talks about Dan Gertler's controversial past, his shady dealings in the DRC, and what this new announcement could mean.
There was a pompous statement coming out from Dan Gertler and his partners. They were coming to some form of agreement with the Congolese government. And of course, the Congolese government also put out a statement around it and had a press conference where they were explaining how they came up with an agreement with Dan Gertler for him pretty much returning Congo's asset to the Congolese people. It's quite interesting for people who do not know who Dan Gertler is. Dan Gertler is an Israeli businessman who's made billions of dollars in the DRC. He was some see as shady deals, as odious contracts, facilitating Congo's officials in pilfering Congo's wealth. How so? He came in the late 1990s when the first Congo war started, and then he became very close to Kabila, the father, Laurent Kabila. He became close to him, and he was able to sell weapons or facilitate the sale of weapons to the Congolese government at the time through some of his contacts in the Israeli military. And Congo was able to use that during the war. After the death of Laurent Kabila, he became also close to Joseph Kabila. So from the early 2000s to probably the end of 2000, the end of the decade, what he has done is that the Congolese government gives him a right to a mine where he buys it a penny on the dollar, very, very cheap. And he takes it to the London Stock Exchange, Toronto Stock Exchange, the international market, and sells it at a very high price. And when he gets the funds, he's able to share the profit of the sale with state officials. He's being investigated. There is an investigation by the Justice Department in the United States looking into specific deals. There is a company called Glencore that gets cobalt from the DRC, and they received a mining asset from purchasing it through Dan Gertler. Looking into what was unfolding with that deal, you will see that there were very shady transactions that took place. There was also an American investment firm called Oxshare. I think they changed the name now. If I'm not mistaken, they are called now Talon. Oxshare, a New York-based hedge fund, was also trying to acquire the mining asset in DRC through him. And this is the case that the Justice Department is looking at very closely. In this case, you can see in the final judgment that the US Justice Department did find Oxshare guilty of violating the Foreign Practice Act by bribing African officials, particularly in the Congo. And in the annex of the judgment, you could see a page where they are documenting specific officials, right? The DRC officials and someone called DRC partner, which we know today through the many articles published that DRC partner in this annex refers to Dan Gertler. The example I want to choose is a very specific one. where it shows up to $20 million was sent by Hackshift directly to the bank account of Joseph Kabila, DRC official one, and Augustin Katumba Mwanke, DRC official two. Those are Congolese officials who received this bribery. And this is one of the evidence that was shown to find the American company guilty. But Dan Gertler also has been under sanctions. He's been under US sanctions for his dealings in DRC. He cannot access his bank account. This took place under the Trump administration. Right before Trump left, the sanctions were removed temporarily. Biden reinstituted these sanctions. So Dan Gertler has been unable to gain access to funds that are in US bank accounts or banks that use a SWIFT code. I'm not a big supporter of US sanctions because they are really unilateral processes. In the case of Dan Gertler, I believe there is some form of will to hold him accountable. I'm not sure what this will is coming from, but what needs to be clearly mentioned about who Dan Gertler is, according to the New York Times, is an intelligence asset of Mossad and the United States. He was clearly stated in one of the letters from his lawyers that is so important to US national security. This was one of the reasons why the US should not sanction him. So we know he's an intelligence asset in Central Africa working for Mossad and the United States. What is very fascinating is for 2 decades, his dealings have been the same. He's been taking mining assets in DRC, selling it to the highest bidder, buying it at a penny on the dollar, selling it to the highest bidder without accountability. This accountability coming today should be looked into a bigger context, right? That the culture of impunity that's taking place in the Congo is not unknown to the West. It's not unknown to the United States. It's just when specific interests collide, that's when they engage. So today, hearing Dan Gertler saying that he's going to return mining assets to the DRC, first of all, he shouldn't have had these mining assets. The thing for Congolese, especially for analysts at the Center for Research on the Congo, is to actually look at the agreement that he just signed with the Congolese government. It's a great announcement, but the agreement is sealed. It's a secret deal again. So we do not know what it actually means for him to return the asset. Is he returning it to Congolese registered organizations? If so, are these companies or entities tied to him? We do not know. So we must actually look at it much more closely, not just a pompous statement from the Congolese government or him saying that we have come to an agreement. I'm returning the oil blocks that I received through shady deals. Now it belongs to the Congolese. Much more so, what is into the agreement? And that's the story of the Congo, that we do have many odious contracts that need to be revised. We have to look at the American corporation and all the multinationals in the DRC and making sure that whatever they have actually benefit the Congolese people, but not the interest of the oligarchs, the billionaires, and the multinationals.
Were there any attempts by watchdog groups within the DRC to hold Gertler and his dubious dealings accountable? What processes exist in the country to keep a check on such cases of corruption?
So we do have government entities. We do have also civil society organizations that fight for transparency in DRC. The challenge is not receiving, having organization working on for this context. We have a state that's really almost as a rogue state that works for the interest of a small minority, mainly for capital. So for example, the reason why we have much information about Dan Gertler's dealing is from some of the leaks that came from the civil society, right? I believe last year or the year before, there were 2 Congolese who worked at a bank in the DRC, and this bank was used to help Dan Gertler pass, bypass the U.S. sanctions, right? And these whistleblowers within the bank, they were able to collect the financial information and share it with international organizations working around the issues of transparency, because they were afraid that if they do it from inside of the Congo, they may be killed. When the information was published, they had to run from the Congo. Right now, they are in exile, and they were found. The Congolese government actually sued these two whistleblowers at the bank, and they actually sentenced them to death. Right? You know, Congo, unfortunately, still has death penalty as one of the options for sentencing. So two whistleblowers who exposed Dan Gertler in the DRC today have been sentenced to death. So you know that it's much more difficult for Congolese inside of the country to be able to bring about truth, peace, and justice within the country. So it's always important, as Congolese are mobilizing and organizing on the inside, that they have allies on the outside. They have other organizations that's coming to support them, so that they're not targeted, they're not imprisoned, they're not pushed to exiles, or at the worst, they are killed for standing for truth and justice. And that's really what's needed. Yes, we do have the institutions that can help in these issues, but the powerful elites, the corrupt leaders, the international oligarchs, the billionaires such as Dan Gertler, who have access to Mossad and the United States, have so much power that they could target people on the ground, create a space where people are not able to expose shady deals.